My name is George Nickel. I am one of the deputies at the NASA SEWP Program Office. So before we get started, how many folks in here are familiar with SEWP? Heard of SEWP before? Okay. How many of you are government? Any government folks in the room? Any industry? Okay, so I'm sure industry probably has a lot more questions than government right now about SEWP and what's going on with SEWP. So for those who don't know, I'm here to speak about what we're doing currently at SEWP and SEWP 5. For those who don't know, the SEWP contract, we're in the process of putting together the final RFP for SEWP 6. We are in the process of getting ready for the next iteration. I cannot answer any questions about SEWP 6, but if you want some information on SEWP 6, I'll show you where that is on our website. And we can go from there. So again, my name is George Nickel. I'm one of the deputies at the SEWP Program Office. And today's session, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do to monitor our contract holders' performance. Title, Keeping Our Ducks in a Row, How SEWP Manages the Day-to-Day Performance of Our Contract Holders. So we have a bit of a team that focuses on this in conjunction with, of course, our program director, Joanne Wojtek, as well as our procurement folks back in the SEWP Program Office. But I'll talk a little bit more about what all of that is and how it all works as we get into it. So what is SEWP? SEWP stands for Solutions for Enterprise Wide Procurement. We are a government-wide acquisition contract for ICT or ITC AV solutions, pretty much all-encompassing IT products and the solutions that go along with them, the services associated with them. AV as well. So SEWP currently in SEWP 5, which was awarded May 1st of 2015. It's a 10-year contract, 5-year with a 5-year option. We're firmly in the option period at this point. We started out with 148 contract holders back in May of 2015. We're down to 140. So I know that number is a little different, but we didn't off-ramp anyone. I know early in the contract there was some discussions about off-ramping some contract holders. None of that, the contract holders who left us or chose not to continue on, none of that was due to performance issues. They either chose to step out of the federal marketplace. We had one contract holder literally 3 months into it. They emailed me specifically, said, "Hey, George, after putting in all this effort, we've decided that the federal marketplace isn't for us, so we'd like to terminate our contract." It was for convenience, of course. So we worked with our procurement team back in August of 2015, and they left us. But there are a couple of companies that have gone out of business. I don't have those companies off head, but there were a couple also who chose at the option period in 2020, they chose not to exercise the option. So that was of their own choosing. We did not, of course, as I mentioned, we didn't off-ramp anyone. So that's why we're at 140 contract holders now. 108 of which are small businesses. And through those 140 contract holders, 9,000 providers or OEMs offer their products and services through their contract. Some contract holders have multiple contracts in different groups. We'll break down what the groups mean when we get to as I work through the presentation. But we have 9,000 OEMs. So those are your folks like Cisco, Adobe, Microsoft, Oracle, Apple, Juniper, VMware, some of the bigger folks, and then some more niche providers that you can look up, or OEMs you can look up on our website. So we, of course, are a government-wide acquisition contract, which means every federal agency can purchase against these contracts. And they're support service contractors. So we are a NASA contract. We started in the early 90s, essentially to help a scientist get his computer a little bit faster. This is the true story. I was in elementary school, but this is a true story from what I was told. He went to his procurement folks. It was saying it was taking 8 months to get a computer, said this is taking entirely too long. The procurement folks said, "We have an idea, give us a second." So they put together their package, their idea and what they thought, and then they went over to GSA. GSA said, "You know what? This is good. We don't think everybody will need it. NASA, you can go ahead and set this up on your own." So then NASA does they continue down the procurement process pipeline. They finally are completed with that, and they go back to GSA and OMB to get the delegation of procurement authority. And GSA and OMB said, "This is great. Now, we'll only allow you to do it is if you open it up to all federal agencies." And that's how SEWP became the first GWAC in the early 90s. Part of that process, the contract was scheduled to be awarded the fall of 91. But as you may know, they did not want to award during a presidential transition. So they waited until February or early 92. The first award on SEWP was made, I believe the exact date is February 23rd, 1992, but that was around the time. It was mainly because a presidential transition was going on at the time. So as I said, every federal agency can use this, and they're support service contractors. So if you have any contractors, if the federal government, if you're a federal government customer and you have support service contractors working for you, they can go through an authorization process to purchase on behalf of your agency. And it's been utilized by every federal agency since the inception of the program. I think last year the number was somewhere around 80 federal agencies in total. There was a while there over the life of the contract we weren't sure if the CIA had used this. We found out recently they did. We used to make the joke they may have used this, we just weren't supposed to know they were using it. So that's kind of where that goes. But we are, of course, as I said, a GWAC, a contract vehicle for information and communication technology. We are housed out of NASA, Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland, but we are technically a headquarters program. We are under the newly formed Information Technology Procurement Office. That was formed right after the pandemic started in 2020. So though we sit at Goddard, we are part of the headquarters IT procurement office. So the program management office, as I mentioned, is in Greenbelt, and we have about 15 civil servants who support the program, and then we have another 120 support service contractors who help us with the day-to-day and the operations of the program. I myself am a civil servant. I started out as a contractor back in 2007. I transitioned over to being a civil servant 3 months after SEWP 5, so that was, 2 months after SEWP 5, July of 2015. So I've been a civil servant for 8 years. Getting a little old, but I've been here a while. As of course, working through this presentation, if you have any questions, there's a mic in the center of the room. Feel free to raise your hand and I will address them to the best of my ability. So what can be procured through SEWP? This essentially is our scope. What is the scope of the program? As I mentioned before, we are an IT, information technology and communication solutions contract. So basics of IT, you have information technology, as you see there, and networking equipment, so your computer hardware, all the hardware associated with that, tablets, network appliances, routers, modems, voice over IP storage, all of that is considered in scope. When you get to software, all software is in scope regardless of what the software does. Then we have cloud computing, the X as a service model. So your platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, software as a service, all of that is considered in scope. Then you get to your mobility solutions. So you have telecommunication devices and the monthly services. So in SEWP 4, only the devices were in scope, the monthly services weren't. And as you know, they're often purchased together, so we didn't see a lot of mobility opportunities in SEWP 4. In SEWP 5, we expanded to allow for the data plans like your AT&T services, Verizon services, all of that is in scope for SEWP 5. So we see a lot more mobility opportunities on SEWP. Then you get to supporting technology. So you have scanners, printers, copiers, shredders, all of that is in scope, and then the associated supplies. So if you needed to purchase paper, ink, toner for your multifunction devices, all of that is considered in scope. You can also do leasing. I know a lot of agencies lease printers and copiers. Leasing is allowed on SEWP. Then we get to health IT. So for SEWP 5, that was put in place specifically for Veterans Affairs, the health IT piece. I do recall a couple of years ago we had an RFQ where the VA was looking to monitor veteran sleeping patterns. So they were able to purchase, I forget what the OEM was, but they were able to purchase heart monitors for their veterans to monitor their sleeping patterns. That's considered health IT. So does anybody in the room have a Fitbit or an Apple Watch like me? That is considered health IT. So that's kind of an example of health IT. Then we get to audio, visual, and conferencing equipment. Pretty self-explanatory there. Already all the audio, visual equipment you can think of, mics, projectors, podiums such as this, the audio equipment, if you have an audio rack that you need to house, the furniture housing that equipment is in scope. If you had a conference room, the phone, the cameras, all of that is in scope. Special lighting for that conference room is considered in scope as well. If you had a table with cable management ports to run the cords through, plug in your devices, that is considered in scope. Without that though, tables are not considered in scope. So keep in mind as you're working through, if you're working on SEWP or working with SEWP, it has to have plugins in order to be considered in scope. And unfortunately, we've had several attempts, but chairs are never in scope regardless of what the chair does. So unfortunately, we've had some folks try to purchase, I guess, simulator chairs and gaming chairs, but those are not considered in scope at all. And then we get down to services. So services are a big part, of course. Everybody's kind of paying attention to those. But the services you see there are in scope, 100% in scope. And what that means is they do not need to be purchased at the same time as the product. So maintenance and warranty, those are considered 100% in scope, of course, pretty self-explanatory. Planning and installation, and product-based training. So when we talk about planning, that goes into site survey. So if you needed, as a government customer, you needed a contractor to come out to your site and do a site survey, a Wi-Fi survey to make sure, checking where they would do the installations and things like that, do a site survey, all of that is considered in scope. And government customers can include that as part of their full solution. If they're doing a full, Wi-Fi installation, I've seen many SOWs that do it, that require the agency or the contract holder to come in and do the site survey first. That is considered in scope. And then product-based training. Product-based training is a very, that's the wrong thing. Product-based training pretty much means any product tying to, such as how to use a Cisco network router, or how to do Microsoft Word, how to use the software. That's what we consider product-based training, not the basics of networking overall. That's a little too broad, but as we expand our scope into the next version of the contract, be on the lookout for so those type of services, those will be considered in scope. Then we get to product-based engineering services. And what that essentially means is any service that can be tied to an existing product. So I think some of you may be familiar with Cisco network optimization. That is considered a product-based engineering service. If you have any questions about that, if you're at any point, you want to use SEWP as a customer, or your industry working with one of your contract holder partners, and you have some questions about scope, feel free to email us at help@sewp.nasa.gov. We'll review your SOW, review the specs of your product or solution, and provide you with a scope determination. All right. So how does SEWP work? So essentially, this is a SEWP requirement from start to finish. So essentially, the first step is the government determines they have an IT need or requirement. So they've done their research, or they've gotten a request from their IT department that they need a new service or some new equipment. They identify that requirement. Then the government goes to what we call at SEWP our QRT, or quote request tool, or QRT for short, and they issue that requirement. Through our QRT, they have the ability to do set-asides to the contract holder. So we have 4 groups of contract holders. We have Group A, which is our larger companies under NAICS code 334111, and then Groups B, C, and D under NAICS code 541519. We have a Group B, which is our hub zone and SDVOSB set-aside. Group C is our small business set-aside, and then Group D is all other value-added resellers under that NAICS code. So the government makes the determination as to which groups to solicit or to do a set-aside based on their market research or any other directive they have from their agency. Once they make that decision, they issue their RFQ through our tool, and then the contract holders, of course, they automatically get an email when the request is issued. They will then reach out to their partners, the Cisco's or some of the smaller folks, and say, hey, there's an opportunity out on SEWP, we're looking to bid. They will add the products to their contract, add the service to their contract, and then they'll go through what they have on their side, what we call our CHOP, our contract holder only page, and they will submit their quote to the customer. The customer gets an email letting them know that contract holder has just submitted a response to their request, and they can go and review that quote. One of the things that we do through that process is we verify all items on that quote or on their SEWP contract. So the contract holders are required to have all items they quote you on their contract. So along with the quote, customers receive what we call a verification file. And we'll talk a little bit more about how that verification file works in terms of monitoring our contract holder performance, but we verify that everything is on contract. At that point, the customers received all of their requests. They do their best value determination. So SEWP is a best value contract, not a LPTA, lowest price technically acceptable. The government makes a best value decision as to which contract holder they're going to select, and then the order is then sent over to the SEWP PMO for processing. And that is, when I say processing, that's just internal to SEWP. We collect certain data points, the contract holder, the agency, total dollar amount, the CLINs or items that are on the order, the contract number, and then on the delivery date. Then we assign it a SEWP tracking number. The contract holder then essentially has to do sort of a handshake with us, verifying that, yes, this is the order we agreed to. They acknowledge receipt of that order, and then they begin fulfillment of that order. At that point, that's when we start to monitor more of the interaction between the customer and the contract holder. So this is kind of the PMO's role in terms of customer support. So of course, the SEWP PMO is there to manage the contracts, just the day-to-day managing of how things are going, policies, procedures, processes. We're there to support. We mediate government actions between government and industry, and that goes into part of our performance reviewing for our contract holders. We help facilitate the acquisition process. So the tools we have built on our website take all the acquisition responsibilities or processes in mind. We try to make sure fair opportunity is properly addressed, giving the customer the ability to, the question and answer between the contract holder and the customer. So if contract holders ask questions, customers have the ability, or agencies have the ability to answer them, but once making sure that everybody sees those questions. So if one contract holder asks a question, it's not just the answer directly to that contract holder. Everybody, every contract holder who was solicited on that particular request sees that question. That way there's no questions on favoritism or any contract holder receiving special treatment. We also provide recommendations on best approaches to the acquisition issues. So as policy changes, things change, we have to make changes as a program. We try to be as flexible as we can for the agencies and for the federal government overall. But as those changes happen, we make changes to our program to help better facilitate the acquisition process. And then we inform the government and customer both on contract use, overall contract use, and policies as they change, as I mentioned before. So we do provide reporting back to agencies on how much they've done or how much they've used spent on the SEWP contract. But we are kind of the central point of information for the acquisition process as it relates to SEWP. We provide information, as I said, reporting and some other things to CIOs, procurement officers on what their agency is purchasing and where. So we provide that information. And then we do provide support via industry. So we have our industry team. Jeff Hopkins, who's in the back of the room, is part of our industry team. He's one of the contractors who also supports the program, but he's part of our industry team. We have two teams who kind of support industry. We have our industry team and our contract holder relations team. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But we oversee and monitor the day-to-day performance of our contract holders, making sure, mediating actions between government and industry on both sides. So I know when we say mediate, we do often realize, though the government is not perfect, they do make mistakes on occasion. So we try to make sure that everyone is aware of what the policies are. Government's not perfect. We do realize they make mistakes. So we try to help industry better understand what happened here, and we'll work with the government, even if they, did something incorrectly, work with them to kind of facilitate getting a resolution and getting the order where it needs to be. We support and track and verify supply chain relationships, so our contract holders have the ability to indicate to us if they are an approved or authorized reseller for a particular OEM. And when they do that, they have to provide us a point of contact that lets us know at that OEM they can verify, yes, this company does in fact have a relationship with us, and we consider sale of our products and services through them to be legitimate. So we do have a process by which we monitor that. We monitor or review their technology additions through the TR process, technology refresh. And essentially, contract holders have the ability to add products daily. The average time it takes to review a TR is somewhere under an hour. But of course, that's if everything comes in clean, proper data. There's a format they have to submit to us. In a text file, they have the format. We review certain data points, and it's added to contract. And of course, as we inform the government on acquisition practices, we do the same for industry. So as things change, we make sure our contract holders know this is coming down. So if Any of you are familiar with Section 889 of the National Defense Authorization Act for covered telecommunications equipment and things like that. When that clause came down, we had to make sure our contract holders, one, we incorporated it into our contract, but our contract holders also understood what the ramifications were. There was two parts to that. One, making sure they weren't selling any of that equipment, and two, making sure none of that equipment was in their systems and in their partner systems as well. So we had to work with our contract holders to make sure that they communicated that out to their industry partners, as well as ensuring that their systems were secure as well. And then we manage our industry interactions with, in support of all federal agencies. So anytime industry has a question, we're there to kind of facilitate getting them an answer based on how the government's working and how things are changing. So that's what we're here for. So I mentioned our contract holder relationship management team. We like to call them CHARM, or charming for short. I was a CHARM manager early on at my time at SEWP. I was not the first one, but we established the CHARM team back in 2007, and that was in the beginning of SEWP 4. And I'll give you a little bit of history there. We had a gentleman on our staff who was more of a developer, software guy, but he helped kind of develop the applications we were using to help our contract holders kind of get on board at SEWP and get themselves up and running. And it was taking too much of his time to assist the contract holders. So we essentially said at that point, we probably need a team who's focused on just supporting our contract holders. So that was the inception of the CHARM team. We workshopped the name after a while and we landed on CHARM, but that's when the team came about. So they help manage our 140 contract holders. They roughly get 200 tickets a week. So we have two help desks. We have a contract holder help desk and a customer help desk. The contract holder help desk gets roughly about 200 tickets a week. Everything is responded to within one business day. Now, when we say responded to within one business day, that doesn't mean everything is resolved within one business day. What we're doing there is ensuring that somebody on our staff has looked at it, acknowledged that something needs to be done, or there's an issue that needs to be taken care of, and that's when we say what we mean by one business day. And then we have, of course, 35 calls. They have a helpline also for them as well. We also, for our contract holders, provide, through the CHARM team, contract holder training. And that is to make sure they understand what their roles and responsibilities are as a contract holder. They have sales teams, making sure their sales teams know what their rules are, making sure they're playing in the SEWP sandbox properly. We also are responsible for contract holder documentation. So we have what we call our contract holder user manual, or CHUM for short. I'm sure you guys know the government loves its acronyms. CHUM is one of my favorite ones, but it's contract holder user manual. And it's the day-to-day of how our contract holders should be operating within the SEWP program. It gives them just some guidance on some various topics, but also some rules on quoting, just some general rules on how to work on SEWP, provides them information on NAICS codes, novation agreements, some other contracting documentation, also how to do a TR. All of that information is included in CHUM. So essentially, it's a contract holder Bible. If I wanted to be a contract holder on SEWP, I would need to refer to this to make sure I know what I'm doing. Then we host program manager meetings. And program manager meetings are held once a year, where we bring all our contract holders together and we kind of let them know how things are going on SEWP, what our plans are, and also it's an opportunity for them to provide us feedback on how things are going. So if there's issues with some new process we implemented or new policy that we implemented, if it's not going well, it's an opportunity for them to let us know. However, we don't wait for that program managers meeting to address it. If there's a broader, bigger issue facing all of industry or all of our contract holders, we try to hit it head on. But that's the main focus of our program managers meetings. And then we have program performance, and that's what we'll be talking about here at this session. And program performance is the day-to-day monitoring of our contract holders' performance. Essentially, it's not past performance, I'll clear that up, but it's to ensure that they play within the rules and they know what they're doing. There's 5 categories, which I'll talk about a little further on into the presentation, but we also do contract holder one-on-ones. One-on-ones, we did 1 round, I think 2 rounds of them actually, for SEWP 5, and it was to give the opportunity for contract holders to discuss with us directly issues they may be having on SEWP or things they don't feel comfortable discussing at the program managers meeting when we're all in a larger session. So this is an opportunity to have some one-on-one time with the program. We'll go over some things with them, of course, but it's an opportunity for having that one-on-one time with us. Let us know their pain points or unique issues that they're facing. So this is program performance. Program performance, essentially, as I mentioned before, tracks the day-to-day performance of our contract holders. It's not past performance. Past performance was done at the contract level in SEWP 4, but we do not do that in SEWP 5. But we will provide past performance documentation if a contract holder requests it. So they can send us an email, we'll fill out the past performance documentation and send it off to the customer. Ratings are done on a rolling 3-month review for 4 of the 5 categories, and I'll explain a little bit more about that. But there's 2 things that can happen in program performance. You can either get a strike or a downgrade. And what a strike is a minor violation of one of our policies as identified in the category. And then a downgrade results in cumulative strikes or a violation of a zero tolerance policy that we have. So contract holders, we have a program performance document that they follow that kind of outlines each of the requirements of each category. So these are the 5 categories. We have customer satisfaction, information distribution, contract adherence, reports, and delivery. These kind of all have their own rules around them. The one you'll see probably the most movement in, well, 2 you'll see the most movement in. 1, contract adherence, just because there's more rules surrounding that. And then below that, the next one is delivery, just because that's done a little bit differently than the other 4. So I'm not going to go too much detail here because I have some slides that kind of explain which each category is as we move forward. But so there's 5 ratings. You get excellent, very good, good, fair, and poor. Everyone starts out at excellent. The role here is that the SEWP PMO is not to put you in a gotcha moment or get caught or anything like that. We want all our contract holders to be excellent. But we do understand that that's not realistic. So we want to make sure our contract holders know that we're monitoring their performance and they show up on the SEWP website. So we have a program performance page that's public, available to CEOs, presidents of companies and all of that, but it's also available there for the customers. And it's mainly meant to be as Joanne, our program director, likes to put it, a wall of shame. It's not, again, like I said, it's not to be a gotcha, but nobody wants to be the one company who is rated fair or poor. You don't want to see a sea of blue and you're the one company that shows up as red or orange for fair. So a lot of CEOs or presidents of companies, they use that as an opportunity to, work with or rather PMs use that with their company leadership and use that as an opportunity to get the proper support they need for the program to ensure that, if we're going to be a SEWP contract holder, you don't want to end up in one of these lower ratings. I need the support as a program manager. One of the things I do want to highlight there is that everybody asks us what it takes to be successful as a SEWP contract holder. For those of you who are contract holders, if you're in the room, or for those who are interested in the follow-on, the one thing we always reiterate is that you need the support from your management, whether it be your executives or your C-suite folks, but you truly need the support of your company's leadership in order to be successful. If they aren't going to properly support the PM and make sure that he or she has the resources to run the day-to-day, it's going to be very difficult for you to not end up in fair or poor status. So anybody who's interested in the program, keep that in mind. Make sure you have that support from your leadership. So the first category is customer satisfaction. And that's pretty much the quality of products and services offered, interaction and responsiveness to customers, and satisfactory resolution of problems, and not excessively delaying an order. What we do here is when something happens, when something happens with a contract holder, we reach out to their PM and deputy PM. On the SEWP website, we have a listing. Each company is required to have 2 points of contact listed at all times. That's the PM and deputy PM. We'll reach out to them to ensure that those issues are resolved. So for customers, oftentimes you'll issue your RFQ, you go back and forth with the salesperson. They're very attentive. They answer all your questions in a timely manner. They pick up all your calls. They're very eager to work with you. Then you've issued them the order, and now there's something wrong, and now they're hard to reach. Because you've already cut them the order, they've already gotten paid, they've got their commission, so they've moved on. You let us know at the SEWP PMO, send us an email to help@sewp.nasa.gov, and we will automatically reach out to the PM and deputy PM, and they know that. And a lot of them, for a lot of them, their compensation and their performance reviews are tied to how well they do on the SEWP program. So they do not want to be in the fair or poor rating as you saw earlier. So if there's ever any issues, reach out to us. You can give us a call via the helpline. You can reach out to us. We have chat available, online chat. You'll chat directly with someone at our help desk. I know we're in Hawaii right now, so there's a 5-hour difference, but we're available 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern time daily. I know that's a little bit difficult for some of the folks in Hawaii, but we do also extend our hours during busy season. So end of August into September, everybody's favorite time of the year, I'm sure, when sales folks are running around trying to close deals, contracting officers are trying to make sure they've obligated the money before September 30th. If you reach out to us at any point during that time, we will work with you to make sure that we get the issue resolved. So we have the phone line, we have chat, and of course we have our email. You can email us at any time. Somebody will respond to you within 1 business day. One of the things we also monitor here in terms of customer satisfaction is how well the contract holders actually respond back to us as a SEWP PMO. Because if they aren't responding to us, chances are they aren't responding to you. So we make sure that they know that responding to the SEWP PMO is paramount in order to keep their program performance at the excellent level or very good. One of the things I failed to mention earlier when I showed the ratings is anytime a contract holder is rated poor, it shows up along with their quote that they submit online. So we do that intentionally because there may be some other pressing issues with that contract holder that needs to be addressed or the government needs to know. So I'll go back to SEWP 4. We had an issue with a company who was going out of business at the time. However, they had some outstanding quotes available. Customer reached out to us, sent us an email and asked, well, why are they rated poor? We couldn't say they're going through bankruptcy because legally we couldn't say that, but we said, try reaching out to them via phone. See if you get anybody to answer. Clearly their customer satisfaction took a hit because nobody was picking up the phone at that time. They had let go of a bunch of people. They had no support to support what was left of the company. So that's why we do that. If there's any more serious issue, we'll definitely let you know what we are able to let you know in terms of the government so that you can make an informed decision through the acquisition process. We don't want you to award to someone who cannot perform because what will end up happening is you keep working, and eventually you'll have to either terminate the order, or it's going to take you a longer time, or it's going to cost you more money to complete the order. So we try to give that information to you up front, and let you know what's going on. So that's kind of what's going on there. So this title should say information distribution. I didn't catch that in the making of the slides, but one of the things we monitor with information distribution is ensuring our contract holders provide the correct information to customers. So that is with their documentation, any information they have, print documents, it has to be accurate. We don't review it, however, but if it's brought to our attention that's incorrect, we do reach out to the contract holder and let them know that there's an issue with this particular document. Making sure they inform customers of proper procedures on SEWP or processes on SEWP. We have a rule that all orders must be sent to the SEWP PMO before being processed. Now, they can get hit twice in this for saying something out of line here, because 1, they've told the customer incorrect information. 2, they haven't followed the proper process, which would hit them in another category. But what that is essentially is they provide the customer incorrect information, and the customer thinks they can do something they can't or shouldn't. And we will track that and let them know you need to make sure your team knows orders must be sent to the SEWP PMO before you begin fulfillment. One of the major ones that used to happen, it doesn't happen as much recently, is contract holder will say, oh, we never got the order from SEWP. Well, as part of the process, the contract holder has to essentially acknowledge receipt of the order. And we keep a timestamp of that. So if you tell the customer you don't have it, we can look at our system and say, hey, you acknowledge receipt of this order on November 8th at 1:30 p.m., clearly you have the order. Now, I will say what may happen there is sales folks may not be talking to program folks, and that's where the issue may lie. So if you're working with your sales folks as contract holders, make sure your sales folks check with your PM before you say anything to the customer. One of the things we are very avid supporters of at the SEWP PMO is that all interaction from a salesperson or anyone who's not the SEWP PM any interaction in regards to SEWP, you keep your SEWP PM abreast of what's going on. That is the first way to kind of get yourself in trouble. I recall a couple of years ago, Joanne was doing a training with one of our contract holders, and she specifically made it a point to say that in the training she was doing a contract holder training, and she said, make sure you keep your PM abreast of what's going on, keep them informed. Less than a week later, somebody who was in that training emailed, you were at our office last week providing training. You said keep our PM involved, but I'm just going to email you anyway. Literally, that's what they said in the email. And she said, thanks for saying that. That's an issue, program performance strike, and the contract holder knew from then on not to do that. So we support the PM, but you at your company have to support the PM as well in order to be successful. So your electronic and paper-based communication, let's be up to date. And so one of the things we do every year, we check each contract holder's website. They're required to have a SEWP dedicated page to ensure that they're providing the proper information. A lot of this is contract related. It's specified in their contract, but they have to have points of contact, they have an ordering guide, how to reach SEWP, all of that, and they also have to have point to the SEWP website. We review the websites annually. And then we have zero tolerance policies, directing customers to an alternative contract. And what we mean by that is if the customer comes to SEWP with an opportunity that is in scope, that works for SEWP, let them use SEWP. Don't say, now we're going to make more money on some other contract, go to another contract. We make it clear to the contract holder. If you're on SEWP, this is a SEWP opportunity, it remains on SEWP. Sharing RFQ information. So this is a big one. Our contract holders are allowed to share information with their partners in order to respond to requests. But that information should not be used by their partners to populate marketing databases or for their partners to reach out to the customer directly and say, hey, we have a better solution, or you should work directly with us, or whatever the case is. So we are very cognizant of the idea that happens, or the fact that happens, and we make it a point to our contract holders. If we find out that happens, that is an automatic downgrade. And if we see a continued abuse of that, we reach out to our procurement folks and see if there's any further action that needs to be taken. And then also requesting access to an RFQ that they were not solicited on. So as I mentioned before, when the customers do their RFQs, they have the ability to set aside to a group or go to a group. If you, as a contract holder, were not solicited, you can't say, hey, I saw you sent this out to Group B, but my company offers it a little bit better. Can you go to Group C, or can you go to Group D, or whatever the case is? That's a violation. And the reason why we say that is the customer may have gone to Group B because they have a socioeconomic goal they need to meet. Their SDVOSB dollars need to be higher, or their agency has some requirements in that regard. So that's probably why they went to SDVOSBs, or that's probably why they went to hub zones. So we instruct our contract holders not to step outside and reach out to the customer to ask them to change that. So then we have contract adherence. So this is, when I said the most active category, this is the one I'm talking about. So this has the most rules. You have to follow what your requirements are on the contract, follow the correct quoting procedures. So if the customer uses our quote request tool, the contract holder is required to respond back through that tool, provide a quote and a verification file. That verification file must match the quote. If there's ever an issue with that verification file and it doesn't match the quote, we tell our customers to ignore it, but then it hits the contract holder in this category in terms of program performance. They're also required to only quote items that are on their contract. So if we find that they aren't quoting items, or they're quoting items that are not currently on their contract, that's also an issue. And you must honor your quote. So if you quoted it, you must provide it. You can't come back 3 weeks later and say, hey, you know what, I can't keep that pricing, even though the quote is still good. You can't say, will you allow me to update the pricing? No, you can't do that as a contract holder. You have to honor what you quoted. Now, one of the things I do want to point out here is, as I mentioned before, the government is not always perfect. So what may happen is, or what I've seen happen in the past is, the customer has provided the contract holder has provided the customer a quote. At no point in time did anyone check if maybe that configuration was properly set up. So I did have an instance one time where the contract holder was ordering, let's use cars as an example. They were ordering a Honda and a Toyota and maintenance for each. Instead of ordering a Honda car and Honda maintenance and a Toyota and Toyota maintenance, they ordered Honda, Toyota, Honda. Get what I'm getting at? They ordered the wrong maintenance the second time around. So nobody stopped and said, you may want to check and make sure that the Toyota has the right maintenance. And they provided a quote to the customer for exactly what they asked for. But when they went to look at the order, they found that we got the wrong maintenance. And so we had to clear it up. We didn't hit the contract holder in terms of program performance because clearly there was an issue with the configuration. However, we encourage our contract holders, if there's ever an issue, you're looking at an order, things don't look quite right, reach out to the customer. The worst thing they can say is, no, that's exactly what we want, or no, they'll reach back out to their technical folks to ensure that, is this exactly what you want? Oh, no, we meant to get the right maintenance. We got the wrong maintenance this time. So keep that in mind. And then following correct ordering procedures. As I mentioned before, contract holders are required to receive an STN from SEWP before processing an order. So STN stands for SEWP tracking number. But if they fail to do that, that's an issue as well. And they're also required to send us the order within 1 business day. Within 1 business day. So if they have an order for 5 weeks and they forget to send it to us, that's an issue on their part that hits them in this category as well. And if we need a verification file from them for the particular quote or order, we'll reach out to them. They're also required to attend the SEWP required meeting. So when we did the round of one-on-ones, they're required to have one one-on-one with us, and then they're required to attend the program managers meetings. Failure to make the program managers meeting multiple times will result in program performance strikes. And then meeting the contractually required reporting, but we also do have a reporting category. So that's contract adherence, but also reporting. And then the other category where you see a lot of movement is delivery. Excuse me. So delivery is done based on orders over the past 6 months that have tangible products have shipped. So they have to have at least 5 orders of where tangible products have shipped over that previous 6 months in order to be rated in delivery. They have to meet the user expected delivery date. So that's the date you quoted them and you agreed upon when they issued the order. Now we do sometimes get orders from customers where the order has been issued, or rather, when they issue the order, it's not the same date or time the contract holder quoted them on the order. At that point, we will not hold the customer accountable for that, or hold the contract holder accountable, but the customer may. The customer may have some other issues or may say, no, we really need this in 2 weeks because the ship is leaving the dock and this warfighter needs a laptop, needs to have that or this whatever equipment with them before they ship out. So it's imperative that when the customer or the contract holder sees that delivery date, they ensure that they can meet that on that. And then, of course, that is calculated as a percentage of their total orders. Multiple requests to extend the delivery date also affect your delivery rating. So just as a contract holder, keep that in mind. We don't want to see you keep pushing out the delivery date week after week or day after day. Customers often get frustrated. I will say 75% of our tickets as it relates to order issues are around delivery dates. Where's my product? Where's my license? You said it was going to be here yesterday or last week. We haven't gotten an update. Are we still on schedule? That is the majority of the issues that we see from our customers as it relates to order issues. So these are just some kind of guidance we provide to customers in terms of delivery. The contract default is 30 days. Now that 30 days does not mean all orders are 30 days. It's just we had to have a date to put in, and when we entered into our system, we needed a date, so that's why we chose 30 days. Contract holders have a 5-day grace period to update the delivery date if something is wrong. So if it comes in incorrectly in our system, or we updated it incorrectly, or there was some issue that needs to be corrected, it wasn't what they quoted, they have 5 days to go in and update on the delivery date discrepancies. Once they accept the order, acknowledge the order, they agree to that delivery date, but they're allowed to quote longer delivery times or lead times. We encourage them, honestly, to be upfront with the lead times on the products. Don't overpromise and underdeliver. That's the biggest thing there. As I mentioned before, I think around 75% of our tickets, help desk tickets, are related to delivery issues. So as a contract holder, make sure you're on top of delivery of all your orders. We have a order tool within our contract holder only page that allows our contract holders to update all of their orders. web interface. They can update delivery date, provide remarks to us, the SEWP PMO, as well as to the customer. So we encourage them to do that. They get a report daily of all orders that are due within the next 10 days, as well as any orders that are overdue. So they get a report daily letting them know what the status is, and that's when they should go into the contract holder only page, or CHOP for short, and update it. If you can't deliver on an order, don't accept it. Now, this is very rare that that happens, but if that does happen, communicate with the customer, communicate with the SEWP PMO, so we are aware of the situation and we can get on top of it. Any questions on anything I've said so far?
Delivery date for the services you do have, is that normally 30 days too, or is that something different, delivering services?
So as SEWP is set up now, most of the services are product-based, but we do have the ability for a contract holder to indicate that this order is period of performance or period of service only. And what that does, while it doesn't affect their delivery rating, it still provides the ability to update the customer and the SEWP PMO as to the status of that order. So as it relates to services, they do have the ability to track and provide information to both us and the customer as to the status of that service and where it is. No problem. So then the delivery equation, this is kind of what you see here. This is how it's calculated. Orders that have missed delivery, plus the orders that have shipped late. That's the total of those. And then over the total number of orders they've received during that time. And then that gives us a percentage. And then what we do next is then we calculate the average delay. So 0 to 29 days, 0 strikes, 30 to 45 days, 1 strike, 40 to 60 days, 2 strikes, greater than 60 days, 3 strikes. So that, along with the percentage, we combine them, and then it gives them their rating of excellent, very good, fair, poor. So one of the things we also tell, question? Yes.
Yeah, really quick question for you about the delivery equation here. Does the PMO also consider delays from the customer side if they're pushing the data? Is that part of it?
Yes, so our contract holders also have the ability to go into the tool and say the customer's not ready to accept the products or the services, and there's what we call delayed status in our system, and they have the ability to put the order in delayed status, indicate customer's not ready to accept the order, and that does not affect their delivery rating. However, when the customer is ready to accept the order, we usually put the order back in what we call not started status or entered status, and it'll sometimes show the order as extremely late. What the contract holder needs to do then is go in and immediately update the delivery date to indicate, oh no, we're back on schedule, but this is the new delivery date. So yes, it's a lot of responsibility on our contract holders. I mean, that's what we look for in a contract holder, someone who's gonna be very attentive to the government. They know how to manage the day-to-day. Any issues that come up, they address them immediately. As I mentioned before, we're not expecting you to resolve every issue immediately, but we are expecting you to at least acknowledge the issue, get on top of it, reach out to who you need to, and provide constant updates. So we don't expect you to acknowledge it rather what we don't want is you acknowledging it on the first day. When you got the ticket, yeah, we know there's an issue, we're on top of it, thank you for reaching out. And then we don't hear from you again for a week. That's not, to us, that's not good customer service. That's not good for the customer. That's not good for the SEWP PMO. There needs to be a daily cadence of providing the customer what's going on. We reached out to the OEM today. They're getting back to us tomorrow. They told us by 2 p.m. Eastern time, they will have the tracking number for you for your product shipping, et cetera, et cetera. That's the type of information we want to see. Custom contract holders also have the ability to provide tracking information. So if you're shipping via FedEx, tracking number, you can do all of that via the tool. So, like I said before, with the equation and the average delay factored in, we give you your rating. Now, if a company doesn't have more than 5 orders that they've done in the last 6 months that were physical, tangible products have shipped, we give them a neutral rating, strictly just for delivery. The other categories, that doesn't affect that. But for delivery, that's how we do delivery. So just kind of how SEWP operates, when there's issues between customers and contract holders, we sometimes will reach out to both parties and conduct a call over the phone. We'll reach out to the customer first, typically to get their side of things. Because we are government, we're a little partial to them, but we will reach out to them first. But then we will reach out to the contract holder to kind of get their side of things, see where things stand if necessary. We try to reach an amicable solution for both. We can't force anybody to do anything. Well, we can force the contract holder to do some things, but we try to remember, we can only do what the FAR and the contract allow for. Contract holders often sometimes try to include terms and conditions that conflict with the program or the SEWP terms and conditions, and we don't allow that. They're working with OEMs sometimes who have terms and conditions that conflict with the SEWP terms and conditions. Certain software providers, I won't say any names, have some pretty tough terms and conditions that they try to get passed at the delivery order level. The government oftentimes cannot sign them, so we make sure that both parties understand that. But one of the things our contract holders also are required to do is at the quote level, include those terms and conditions as part of your quote so the government can evaluate it as a whole. They shouldn't be evaluating terms and conditions, or terms and conditions shouldn't be sprung up on them once the delivery order is issued. So, oh, hey, here are some terms and conditions you need to sign. Often at that point, they can't sign them. So if there's ever any issues with that, they should have been presented at the quote level. And if you're a government customer where that happens, let us know and we will get to that contract holder immediately. I got a question?
Yes, I'm from industry and contract holders that we work with. We always ask the question, but we've noticed this last cycle that more and more government is turning off no questions.
The no questions. So we encourage our customers to do that. Like I said, we can't force them to do anything. We added that question and answer feature, I think, back in, 2016 or 17. And it was because we saw the need for it. Part of it was there was a lot of conversations happening outside of the tool where contract holders weren't all getting the same information. In the interest of being fair and open communication and transparent, we put this question and answer tool in there. Now, we've encouraged customers to use it. One of the things that comes up with the question and answer tool is that the RFQ will close and the customer will get no responses, and then they'll ask us, well, why didn't I get any responses? Well, you had the question and answer tool closed, or they didn't answer a question. So there may be a question in the tool that say the configuration is off, or are you sure this is what you want, or we need serial numbers, et cetera, and the customer failed to answer them. In that case, if a contract holder runs into, they've asked a question or submitted a question, and the customer hasn't responded, reach out to us at the SEWP PMO. Our team will reach out to them to say, hey, if you want a response, you probably should respond to that question.
So my question really is, does the SEWP PMO track the percentage of times that the government is turning off?
It's going up. We don't at the moment, but I'm sure we can. That's not something we've ever been looked at. But I'll say this. It does affect the ability for contract holder to respond to requests. Our no response number is somewhere around 8%. Ideally, we would like that to be 0. But that's one of the things that affects that, the usage of the question and answer tool. So we'll look into that and see what we can do to encourage customers to use it more. I haven't heard that from our contract holders who said the question and answer feature seems to be turned off more and more. If you're industry working with our contract holders, you're required to work directly through our contract holders, and they in turn can go to the question and answer tool. I say that, the reason I say that is I got a ticket today of an industry partner trying to go around that. So it's fresh on my mind. I responded to it earlier this morning, so that's why. So again, as I mentioned before, we can only allow or require what the FAR and the contract allow. So we are bound by the FAR. I mean, what our CO says is where the FAR is silent, it allows the CO to be innovative, but there's things the FAR isn't silent on, so we have to follow those directions and make sure we're following that requirement. And ultimately, none of the terms and conditions issued by our contract holders or their partners, none of their terms and conditions can conflict with the contract. So as much as we try to be flexible with our agencies and things like that, it must fit within the constraints of the contract. So that's how we keep our ducks in a row. Anybody have any further questions? Yes.
So, copy on the wall, Shane, can you find it on the phone pretty easy? Just out of curiosity, do you do CPARs at all then on the contract holder?
Not at the contract level, no.
Okay,
No.
got it. All right, cool, thank you.
Any other questions?
Is it possible to raise your rate?
Yes. Oh, I didn't talk about that. Yes, this is how it works is for all of the categories except delivery. if you're ever downgraded, you're downgraded initially for the first 3 months, and then you're back up to whatever rating you were prior, or back up to excellent. So if you go from excellent, you go to good, very good, you're down for 3 months, barring any further issues, you aren't, you're raised back up. If you're down multiple colors, so if you're from excellent, you're down to good, 3 months at the at good, and then an additional month for each level you need to go back up. So for the first 3 months, you're down at good. That 1 month, after that 3 months, you're up to very good. Another 1 month, if there's no issues, you go back up to very good. To excellent. So that's how it works. So one of the things we also tell customers, if you see a contract holder is rated very good, don't consider that a major issue. It's sort of a warning shot across the bow for the contract holder to let them know, hey, you messed up here, you missed the policy, or you missed the process, you didn't do it correctly. Kind of go back and check with your team, make sure everybody's aware of the processes and policies, and try to make sure it doesn't happen again. The further you get down that rating, the more concerned we become, and we may reach out to you to have a one-on-one meeting to address those concerns. If there's major issues or things like that, patterns we're seeing, we will reach out to you to kind of say, hey, we need to have a meeting with either myself, one of the other deputy, Teresa Kinney, or if we need to bring in our procurement team, our contracting officer, our program director, Joanne Wojtek, to kind of lay the hammer down, so to speak. That's kind of how that works.
I have a couple of quick questions.
Sure,
Number one, is contractual equal to SDV or SD, or are they both separate?
they're separate.
Okay. That was quick. Second, let's say a customer gets a supercomputer and wants it installed, it's all taken care of and paid for. Now they need someone to come into a cleared facility and have it patched.
Yeah,
Is that a product that can be sold?
yes,
Excellent.
these are easy. And now you're gonna be hard.
Some procurements that come out that say you must have a certain facility clearance versus not.
Yes,
Right. Perfect. That's it. Thanks.
those are great questions. Oh, uh-oh, good.
Clearance is not a category.
No, it's not a category. So the agency themselves would have to indicate in their requirement that this is a cleared requirement. We do have some agencies who do use us who have, cleared requirements, and we advise them to provide separate instructions for submitting of those particular quotes or responses that require cleared information or cleared personnel. I saw 2 more questions.
So you can use this also on professional services too?
No, professional services currently no, but the service has to be tied to an existing product.
Yes.
So, but professional services, not quite. And I need to know a little bit more about what you mean by professional services.
You need some people in there to do an implementation.
Implementation, that's in scope, yes, yeah.
Okay. And then what is the fee for the government to use this?
0.34%.
Okay.
Yeah, federal government.
Okay.
Question on the software piece of it, so we need to, purchase more of an enterprise license for some software, but you currently, the resellers currently don't have that. Is this something you go in and you help negotiate on the government's behalf?
We don't negotiate on the government's behalf, but you can do enterprise licensing through SEWP. So NASA in particular, they have their ELMT, Enterprise License Management Team, who does that, and they do a lot of their purchasing through SEWP. So SEWP itself physically doesn't do that for the government, but NASA has used us to do their enterprise license management, and some other agencies can do that as well. So you can do enterprise licensing through SEWP, yes. Any other questions? All right, before we close out, don't forget to scan your badge at the back. Tomorrow, we're also offering our NASA SEWP provider industry training. What we do there is we bring customers and industry in the same room and kind of provide them kind of more 360 view of the program and training. So if you're available, it's tomorrow at 1 o'clock, and I think lunch is offered in here as well. And if you have any more questions, our booth is 127. Stop by the booth. I will be there. We have some other staff there who will help support. But again, thank you for attending the sessions. If you have any questions, email us at help@sewp.nasa.gov. How you doing?